Today's video is going to be going over reasons why I know that the end is nigh. It is almost the end times. I think we're actually already in tribulation. And I think that that's one of those deceptions where the media and most people, they have wrong ideas of tribulation. And I mean, the word tribulation just means trials and hardships, and I think we're already going through that. I think that we are in tribulation personally, and I think that we're actually in the book of Revelation, and I think that many of the seals have probably already happened, and we're waiting on very specific seals to what happens to a seal unloose on I'm not sure. Seal is a really big symbol though, you know, like the 90s artist Seal, and your mind goes directly to like the creature, but it's really referencing like a heavenly seal. And yeah, we're waiting on those. We're waiting on just a few more, I believe. So here's a painting I did last night, just a little watercolor painting. I wanted to try to get the effect of what it looks like to look up at the moon. Now, I'm not saying this is a perfect representation, but on this, I have two different images, and it's because last night I kind of saw the moon doing two different crazy things, but that I've seen before. So let me explain what's going on here. The moon now throws off glare like crazy, and it did not used to do that. I remember way back in the day in the 90s, I remember the moon was like not a lot to look at. It was kind of smudgy and gray and not anything like the white, shining, throwing off glare. I tried to show you, so the crescent shape, but it throws off glare like behind it and in front of it and throwing it off to the side of it. The moon throws off some crazy glare these days. It did not used to do that. The moon also has a very distinct halo around it, kind of how you might think of the sun lighting up. You know, when you draw a sun, you draw the circle and then the rays coming out of it. It's almost like the moon these days also shines, has that brightness coming off of it in a way that I don't remember it being like that in the 90s. I really remember the moon being a lot more gray. I think that the NASA Ball Earth stuff was actually more believable back in the 90s. Well, partially because I believed in that stuff. So your mind, what you believe, literally makes you see things differently. The human mind is amazing, and vision goes through your brain. And if you expect to see something, it looks a certain way. And the eyes even have blind spots that the mind will just fill in for you. To get to the second thing, what is this red? I'm hoping that some of you know exactly what's going on here in my picture. Nowadays, it also seems like the moon can get these geometric, faint shapes behind it. And it almost looks like we're seeing a 2D image of some sort of three-dimensional shape. It's almost like there's a, I mean, it reminds me of in Zelda, the Link to the Past was the one I always played. There's these maidens that are trapped inside of crystals, and it almost looks like the moon is like trapped inside of this faint red crystal object, and we're just seeing two dimensions of that. It looks kind of diamondy behind it, almost like the moon is encased in this red crystal. But the way that this stuff works, it's all optics, and the firmament is like a giant lens that we see things through. So the way things really are versus the way that they appear to us could be totally different. Let me know if you've seen this though, this faint, it's like almost hard to distinguish against the black of the sky, but you can see redness, and it's in like a very specific geometric shape around the moon. Let me know in the comments if you've seen this too, but it did not used to be like this. I painted another one. I did not try to get a triangle shadow in the bottom left there. Now, later in the night, the moon, it kind of started looking a little bit different, where it was like you couldn't as easily see the smaller red geometric thing, but the moon more had like a brightness all around it. And it's like that the red thing got bigger, but more faint and looking kind of rainbowy, like prismatic, maybe even. But again, looking geometric, looking like there's defined borders of some geometric shape around the moon where there's something optically happening there. And so this is kind of what it looked like to me. This is an artistic rendition. None of this stuff, you can't take a photo of this stuff. It doesn't work like that. You need to look with the human eye and see what you see. And so I did my best to draw a picture. So the moon, at first it started like this, and then I don't know, this kind of thing, it was like there were light clouds. They've been spraying like crazy, but it's like it changed a little bit the way that the moon looked, and then it went back to this way later in the night. And yeah, that's it for the way that I see the moon these days. And some of the more concrete signs, like it did not used to throw glare. It did not used to have these strange geometric looking shapes behind it that are colored in ways. So let me know if you've seen these too. Sunglasses is something that I've been wanting to talk about. Now that we're creeping away from winter, that morning sun is so bright. I never used to wear glasses. I grew up in Southern California. I never used to wear sunglasses. I don't wear other glasses either. And I remember my dad was always trying to get me to wear sunglasses, and I just never was interested. And I really didn't need them. I have blue eyes, live in Southern California. I do remember in like high school, you would be stuck in a dark classroom. The teachers would make it so dark, they'd crank the air conditioning, so I'd be freezing. And then you walk outside and I'd be blinded for a little bit. That made sense because I'd be going from a really dark classroom to very bright sun and concrete. And I was basically blinded for a lot of walking between classes in certain scenarios. But it wasn't like an everyday thing. I wouldn't bring glasses. I wouldn't bring sunglasses ever in high school. I never drove with sunglasses ever, and I didn't have problems. I wasn't being blinded left and right. It was very specific, like exiting a movie theater, that kind of thing. Going from really dark to bright outside time with concrete, yes, I'd be blinded for a little bit. But nowadays, I'm just blind being outside, and overcast days can be the worst. If it's just like a thin layer of rarely natural clouds these days, they spray and get the silver white skies. That stuff is blinding to me. Just being outside is blinding. And the morning sun is so blinding. It's dangerous today to drive without sunglasses in ways that it didn't used to be like that. It really did not used to be the case where, okay, this is very dangerous to be driving without sunglasses. These days, I'm like, oh, this is dangerous. This is a dangerous situation. I'm literally blinded. So that is very different than the way it used to be. The sun is brighter. Time is another big one. Jesus Christ specifically told us that in the end, the days shall be shortened. That's exactly what's happened. And these are the big reasons that I know for certain that we are in end times. Because I don't think any of this stuff was happening 30 years ago. Because people will always come out of the woodwork. Oh, there's always people that are saying the end is here. Well, did those people have a sun that was incredibly bright all of a sudden? Did those people have a moon that got incredibly bright all of a sudden? Did those people have days that literally started just zipping by? I don't think so. They were talking about like barcodes and stuff as if that's the mark of the beast. Did those people have the entire world governments conspiring together to not allow people to shop unless they followed certain rules? No, they didn't. But we have all of those things in our generation. Now, I'm not saying that the people behind in times past, I think that they were just a little bit ahead of the curve. And I do believe that God puts the spirit of urgency on us, and every generation has the spirit of urgency of you gotta get right. Because I mean, it really, if you think about the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter what generation you're born into. We all have the same. We all need to figure out that there's no way to God except through Jesus. And so even if you lived in a more idyllic setting, you should still have some urgency going on, because life is serious and everything we do here really does matter. So that's why I think every generation has people that are like doing the Noah thing, judgment is coming, because every generation gets judged, whether or not you're in the end times or not. Anyways, I truly believe we are in the end. We are riding out the last minutes of this. I equate it in my mind to soccer games. Like, there's the clock in a soccer game, but then the referees get to decide how much extra time gets added at the end of the game. That's what I feel like we're in. I feel like the year 2000 kind of marked, that's like when the calendar should have been, or maybe it's the Mayan thing. Who knows? When was that Mayan thing? 2012 or something? I think we've already passed the date of like, okay, time is up. And I think God is, I mean, of course, God is following his perfect plan that he's always. It's just this feeling that I get, that it's like the game has already ended and we are in overtime now. That's just the way it feels to me. Matthew chapter 24, verses 22 to 24. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. I think it's abundantly clear that the way things are headed, that total destruction reminds me of the Terminator, how it almost seems like at this point the AI, that there's some sort of AI controlling things behind the scenes, and that this AI will go out of control and destroy all of humanity. And if the days weren't shortened, it would have gotten that bad. I believe that. Verses 23 and 24. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets that shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Interesting. Verse 24 is so interesting. The whole if it were possible thing. Does that mean that some elect are going to be deceived, or that all of the elect will eventually figure this stuff out, and so the deception is only momentary? Or I'm not sure. If it were possible, makes it seem like God knows his elect and will make them not able to be fully deceived all the way. But it's an interesting verse nonetheless. Now I'm going to go through some verses that talk about the sun and the moon, and I could dive deeper into this, but this is something that maybe you should do on your own. There's many instances in the Bible, many prophets who have prophesied about the end of the world, and they all have agreement in a lot of places. Now, this one might seem a little weird, but I'll explain it. Joel chapter 3, verse 15, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. There's multiple instances of this, which is maybe the opposite of what I was talking about earlier, about the sun is getting so bright, the moon is getting so bright. We'll get to that in a minute. That's an Isaiah prophecy. This, I think, is right after that. When it goes dark, I think is right after that. Because think of what happens, and the sun and the moon are both lights. What happens if you take a light and you keep pumping more and more energy into it, gets brighter and brighter and brighter, it eventually is going to pop and burst. And so not burst in like a NASA supernova way, but I think that the sun is going to like black out. Like the sun mechanism just goes off one day, and the same thing with the moon. The stars not shining, I think, has already happened, kind of. Have you guys noticed that it seems like you only really see the brightest stars nowadays, and there's so many less stars. Now, I don't live out in the middle of nowhere, but in general, it seems like you go outside at night and you more or less see like the constellation big bright stars. And if you want to see smaller ones, you got to get out a pair of binoculars. Joel chapter 2, verse 31, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. We've been having a lot of blood moons. The moon gets so red nowadays when we do get the blood moon type things going on. What they tell us are lunar eclipses. The eclipses do not work, how NASA says. That's a bunch of BS. And compared to the eclipses I remember seeing in my childhood and being very underwhelmed, nowadays the moon really does look bloody, blood red. And you can go check out NASA stuff. There was some NASA thing not too long ago talking about the moon turning into iron or something, which I think that they're just pointing at this, turning into blood, iron. Iron is red, but also iron is involved with our blood. Matthew chapter 24:29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. I think we're in the tribulation of those days. I think that's us. Immediately after. So, and I think that a lot of, I think that this is like the shit hits the fan moment. When the sun goes dark, I think that they have no choice at that point, I think, than to say the aliens did it. The world governments must unite to fight these aliens that have darkened our sun. And, the firmament's going to open up at a certain point. Water's going to rush down. Things are going to start falling from heaven. I'm sure that they'll be like, the aliens are they're redirecting asteroids from the asteroid belt and launching them at us. Those are the things that they'll have to say. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. For our entire lives, they've been telling us about the big one. So I think a lot of this stuff happens simultaneously. They'll say the aliens, they turned off our sun, they turned off our moon, they're using directed energy weapons to trigger the earthquakes that have been waiting, ready to go for a long time. They're launching asteroids at us. I think that everything will be blamed on the aliens, and they've kind of painted themselves into a corner with the alien thing and the outer space stuff. But hopefully people will have their Bibles and realize, I think some people might even believe the alien stuff, but they'll be able to connect it to the Bible. It's just so much easier to wake up to this deception stuff if you realize everything outer space is BS, and if you read the Bible, Genesis 1, and you internalize that as truth, you'll see the obvious deception there. But I'm just saying, going back to the verse, some of the elect may be deceived, and specifically how, I don't know, but I think that sometimes that comes down to they'll have the right idea, but they're playing in the wrong sandbox, so to speak. They will kind of believe in outer spacey type stuff, but they'll at least be able to connect it to the Bible and be like, no, that's not just aliens shooting asteroids at us. That's wormwood coming down. I don't know. Pray for these people that they can see the deception. There is a great deception over the world, and it all has to do with telling people that they live in the wrong place and talking about millions of years that don't exist, and bunch of nonsense. Isaiah chapter 5 verse 30. And in that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one look unto the land, behold darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. Isaiah chapter 9 verse 19. Through the wrath of the Lord of hosts is the land darkened, and the people shall be as the fuel of the fire. No man shall spare his brother. Isaiah chapter 13, verse 10. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. So what do you know? Isaiah was prophesizing of end times things. And we'll see more from Isaiah. I might do I was going to read Isaiah chapter 30, but I think I might save that for another video. It's just such a I want to read the whole chapter to give some context. Zechariah, this was an interesting one that popped up when I was doing this research. I'm not sure why it popped up when I was talking about, and I was looking for end times, moon, sky stuff. Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm, and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. This is a verse that talks about the satanic ritual that these people do where they blind themselves in one eye. Luke chapter 23 verse 45. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. I believe this is when Jesus, this is a different one. This is just showing that the sun can be darkened, and God has full control over what happens in the heavens. So this isn't the end times verse. This is what happened when Jesus was crucified. The sun was darkened. And so it's just interesting that that's something that happens here at maybe the most pivotal moment, the most important moment on all of Earth. The sun goes dark, and it's going to happen again in the very end. So I just thought that was interesting. But there are other happenings with the heavens. There's the battle where the sun went backwards, but I just wanted to point out that it's interesting that this symbol also happened when Jesus was crucified, that the sun went dark. Revelation. Interesting that this says Revelations. It's supposed to be Book of Revelation, isn't it? Revelation chapter 8, verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. This was weird. I don't know. Did we already have this one? Has this sign already occurred? Is this going to happen somewhere between the sun being brighter and the moon being brighter? It'll become a third first, and then it goes dark? But this is the fourth angel. So maybe in the future, looking at the book of Revelation and all the different seals, and when the first seal gets broken, the second seal gets broken, what's going on? Interesting topic. I do want to read from Isaiah. Just the verses, though. Moreover, okay, so this is Isaiah chapter 30. I don't have a slide. I'm just reading out of my Bible. So Isaiah chapter 30, verse 26. In my next video, I think I'm going to read the whole chapter. It's such a cool chapter. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun. I think that has to do with the fact that we see the day moon all the time now. The sun is the light that rules the day. In the 90s, the day moon was very rare, and the conditions had to be just right. The conditions had to be just right to see a day moon in the 90s. But nowadays, it doesn't matter how small of a sliver the sun or the moon is. It doesn't matter how bright the sun is. You will always be able to see the moon if it's above the horizon nowadays. And it did not used to be like that. And I think that that's the part of this Isaiah chapter 30, verse 26, where it says that the moon will be like the sun. Well, because the sun is the light that rules the day. So the fact that the moon also rules the day today, it has become like the sun. And it shines and throws off glare, and it has a halo looking thing around it nowadays. Those are also things that used to only happen to the sun. Continuing, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold. I think everybody today should be able to tell that the white burning hot sun is not the same happy yellow sun that we had in the 90s. And that nowadays it is white hot. You can feel the UV coming off of that thing is so much stronger. When the sun dips behind a cloud, you feel an immediate temperature drop that is way above what it used to be. And the flip side of that, nowadays, it can be kind of a chilly day, but you go out in the sunshine and you feel so warm in the low sun that back in the day wouldn't have really made that big of a difference. Nowadays, whether you're in direct sunlight or not makes a huge difference. So finishing up this verse 26, as the light of 7 days in the day that the Lord bindeth up the breach of his people and healeth the stroke of their wound. And I think that is talking about, in the Bible, what does it talk about? The whole point of, in the very end times, we'll stop weeping. We're not going to be weeping anymore. Our bodies aren't going to be aching anymore. We're not going to have to deal with sin or evil anymore in the end. So I think that's exactly what he's talking about here. This is the end times when he bindeth up the breach of his people and healeth the stroke of our wound. I don't think any of this is going to get better until the end. I don't think that God is going to heal all of our problems until the very end. And not that he's not working in our lives now. I'm just saying, God still heals us and answers our prayers and stuff, but does that make anybody feel better about where we live right now, right? It's like, thank God that he does answer prayers and all that, but that's not fixing the world, right? He can certainly help us, and but it's clear that things are going to keep getting worse until the end at this point. Well, that's mostly it. Like I said, I want to read all of chapter 30, so maybe that'll be the next video. Also worth, I guess, looking through Book of Revelation and the series of seals and the trumpets and the curses that are poured out. Pharmakia comes into this. The Mark of the Beast comes into this. And I think it's pretty obvious that we're at a cusp of something crazy. And is it another attempted history reset? Does this cycle of the sun getting hotter and the moon getting brighter and time moving more quickly, is this something that happens every time when those in control are doing a reset? I don't think so. This feels different. I feel like their resets that they would do wouldn't, I don't think that they have control over the sun and the moon personally. So I think that this is the big one. I think that this is it. I think Satan is running out of time. So if you haven't yet, figure out about Jesus, read the Bible, read the Gospels, and start your relationship with Jesus, because we're all sinners, and nobody here can do anything that will get you to heaven. There's nothing that you personally can do, or you can't be the super smartest, or you can't be so nice to everyone that you get into heaven. That's not how salvation works. And we all need Jesus. We all come short, and we all have sinned against God, and you need a way to repay that. You need a way to redeem yourself for your sin against God. This is all highly important. I know that you've probably lived your life thinking that the things that you do are inconsequential and that you're floating around in nothingness and who cares what you do, YOLO, right? But actually, God made this place specifically for us. He's directly above us. Jesus is at his right hand, and everything we do is critically important, and we're all flawed and sinners, and that's why we all need Jesus in order to make it to heaven. God bless everyone.